Welcome to the Migrant Resource Centre, Northwest Region Incorporated Diversity and Disability YouTube channel. Your Life, Your Voice program, where self-advocates and professionals in the disability sector are interviewed.
The Diversity and Disability Project would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we work and live and recognise their continued connection to land, water and community. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging.
Nothing about us without us. We pay respects to all self-advocates who have worked hard over the years and still working tirelessly for their rights, supporting others with disabilities and human rights for all.
This channel is for people with disabilities who aspire to seek self-advocacy role models to inspire change in their everyday lives. Nothing about us without us. Choice and control are central themes. Every interview is as unique as you and I.
And it has our fundamental universal human rights ethos of respect for persons with disabilities, having their views heard and acknowledged. After all, it's all in the name. Your life, your voice.
Be the voice of change in your life.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Your Life, Your Voice. My name is Julie and I'd like to welcome Larissa McFarland as my co-host. Hi Larissa, how are you doing?
I am doing well, except for a cold, so I hopefully won't have a coughing fit. But it's lovely to be here. Good to see you, Julie.
Likewise. And today we have Maryanne Cosic, who is the new chairperson and president of NEDA. Welcome, Maryanne. How are you doing?
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's really great to see you. I just want to say I haven't seen you for ages, Maryanne, and it's lovely to see you again.
Lovely to see you too, Larissa.
And Maryanne's been a very busy person, so with a very, very responsible role. So congratulations to Maryanne as being the new president of NEDA. So can you tell us your role at NEDA, Maryanne?
Well, my role at NEDA is I've now taken over the president's role on the board of NEDA. I've been on the NEDA I've been the Victorian representative for the last 3 years, representing disability and diversity. When I first jumped on the NEDA board, I was just the Victorian representative for D&D, because each member organisation has to have a representative from each state, and I was the Victorian one.
I remember that day. It was about 4 years ago.
Yeah, because when you're on the NEDA board, you got, I think it's a 7-year term.
Oh.
And I've still got 3 years to go.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Maryanne. And would you like to ask the next question, Larissa?
Sure. So I would like to know a little bit more about NEDA and what it stands for and what its purpose is.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to read what I've written because otherwise I won't give you the right info. NEDA is a national peak body that represents the rights of people with cultural background, which is people with who are from ethnic backgrounds whose English is their second language, who live with a disability. Well, we are a DPO. That means that 75% of our staff and executive of the council are people with from cult background, which is people from multicultural background who live with a disability. The treasurer is the only position that is not identified as a person with a disability. So that's the majority of our team have either got a disability or identify themselves from a cult background. And to be the NEDA president, you have to have you have to be from a multicultural background and have a disability. So yeah.
That's great. That's really high. That's a great commitment. Most orgs sort of have 50, disability-led orgs have like a 50%, but I'm impressed. We should have more organisations which have majority disabled people, more disability organisations which have majority disabled people, in my opinion. So just can you clarify again, what does NEDA stand for?
No, I always get this back to front. National Ethnic Disability Alliance, I think. I always get the A mixed up. So it's right. National Ethnic, so you've got to have some ethnicity, Disability Alliance.
I've just Googled it. You know that, Maryanne. I just Googled it. So that's
cool. I just to make sure I always get the last name back to front.
So when did NEDA start?
That is a good question that I don't know the answer to.
Fair enough. Do you know why it started? I mean, I'm obviously it's important that there's a voice for disabled people from ethnic backgrounds, but was there a real sort of recognition at the time that disabled people with ethnicity were not getting a voice, do you think?
I mean, I'm going to make that assumption because I'm not sure how long it has been. Well, we've had the same CEO for the last 12 years, so I'm assuming that's one of the reasons why I think we're the only peak body in Australia that has people with disabilities, that because I know there's other organisations like FECA and all them sort of organisations, which I'm not sure what they do, but we're one of the federal bodies that go to government and help with trying to make it better for everybody.
So how big is NEDA? Like, how many staff do you have?
I think we've got 8 at the moment.
That's great. And so can you tell us more what the purpose is?
NEDA, well, I can tell you how NEDA is funded. NEDA is funded by Department of Social Services and gets they call grants from the department, and also NDIA, which is the National Disability Insurance Agency. So that's where we get the majority of our funding, which is Department of Social Services.
So as the peak body, what sort of what activities do you undertake?
We talk to ministers and make them aware of our position on people with disabilities and help them to understand how the policy that the government's making affects with people with disabilities, and give them our perspective on how to improve the policy to not only to include, but to give them a perspective that they've got to not forget that we're we're part of the community and they've got to consider us, because it's all right to have a disability, but if you can't speak English, then you can't advocate for yourself. And we're there to say, hang on, don't forget the minority of people that don't speak English, and we need to make sure that we're heard, we're not left behind.
Yeah, because there's lots of barriers when English isn't your first language. So much information is presented in English. There isn't information in alternative languages always, or if there is, it's really hard to find. And also there's so much jargon. So I can imagine if English is not your first language, as someone whose English is my first language, I really struggle with, trying to understand information that has a lot of jargon. So that would be,
and because because the government departments use acronyms like DPOs, so hang on, what are the? So you basically got to have your own dictionary of definitions of what these things mean. So I can appreciate for somebody with that English is not their first language, you're going to think, what does it mean and how does it affect me? So we try to make government aware of trying to make it, when they're writing information sheets, that they use easy English, and then we get them translated, or if they need to be translated, we can get them translated in whatever language it needs to be translated into.
so is that part of your role? Is that you organise?
We've got the website in different languages. Don't ask me how many languages we've got, because our website's going to be updated shortly. But sometimes we work in partnership with other organisations for government grants. So we work, if NEDA doesn't do all the projects themselves, they might partner up with other organisations and put submissions together so it gets a broader input. So NEDA talks to government, but we also talk with other organisations to get things happening and things that need to be addressed.
Right. So like a collaborative approach.
Yeah, we do a collaborative approach with other organisations. So we're not the only ones that are actually being the disabled drum. We're doing it in partnership with lots of other agencies and organisations around the place.
Great.
I think that's quite standard for disability organisations, even though NEDA is a peak body, because disability is so broad, and to get the voices in of a lot of minority groups, it's really essential that organisations like NEDA rightly do, and a lot of other organisations like DD, we form partnerships with other organisations to get to try and include catchments that don't necessarily we always see every day. And so it's great. Go on, Larissa.
I was going to say, maybe it sounds like other disability peak orgs that don't have a specific focus on people from non-English speaking backgrounds, sounds like they may have something to learn from you lot in terms of learning about collaboration and working together, because I think that the disability sector could do much better at that.
That's why we've got a member from each state, and they've got to be registered to be on NEDA. Yeah.
Do you know the stats, Maryanne, around what is the percentage of people from non-English speaking backgrounds in Australia, or how many disabled people from non-English speaking backgrounds there are. Do you happen to know the stats on that or the percentage of?
Well, what exactly percentage of people on board and stuff?
No. So, for example, in Australia, it's about 18-20% of the population has disability. And I wondered how much of that is made up of people from cold or non-English speaking backgrounds.
I'm not sure.
That's okay.
I don't have the stats. I don't have the stats on me because what I've based the information on is the questions that Julie had sent to me. So I'm not sure, but I can find out and we can do a follow-up if you want me to when I know what. Because I've only been in the role for just over a month.
Oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. And
that's okay.
It's a statistic that I should know as an Australian living on stolen land in Australia and in our multicultural society. And I think that we should all go and look it up, and maybe we can add it to the notes of our YouTube later, because I imagine it's quite high, and I imagine actually that the statistics are probably underestimated because, as we know, people from marginalised spaces don't necessarily get counted.
Well, I know I was having a meeting with one of our and we as part of NEDA, we've got a data cube. And I know in some instances when we do, when we do the when you do the stats for the government, some minority groups aren't even counted in that. So it will be very interesting to find out who's being counted and who's left out, because not all groups, I don't think, are counted.
I think you're referring to the census.
Yeah, that's it. I couldn't think of the word, but the census.
Yeah, the census.
I know that there's some. I don't know if it's all groups or some groups or what. I don't know if we're all counted or whether it's not counted. But I know.
As far as I know, the census is a little bit limited and has had a lot of criticism from disability groups because it actually doesn't even count disability. It asks, I think it asks if you have a carer, so then, or if you can't do something, and that way you're counted. But what if you can do that and still identify with disability? Because as we know, disability is broad. So the census and the stats are not something I necessarily trust. So.
And that's what I've based, like as I said, I've been on the board for a little while, but as far as being the president, I was only appointed in February this year. So you've got to excuse me not being up to date with statistics and things like that, but I can find it out for you if you would like me to.
Yeah, let's do that. And also, please don't feel, I mean, we're human here and we can't know everything. And we also know that we can always access information other places because we can't keep everything in our head. And sometimes stats aren't necessarily the important thing. It might be more important about the way we relate to each other and our philosophy around life in general. Yeah. So don't feel bad, Maryanne.
Thank you.
So how about we move on? So this is a bit of an opinion question. Do you think the NEDA is progressive?
I'm glad you answered this question because I've actually got the answer. I think NEDA is very progressive. I am a woman with several disabilities. But I am not the CEO, I'm a irregular person. So it just shows if you get elected, if you're in on a board that's part of the NEDA network. If you get elected for your member organisation, you can always end up doing my position. You've only got to get elected.
You got to put your hand up.
You got to put your hand up, and you got to say, "I'm willing to try my best to improve the situation for people with disabilities." Where was I up to? I
And
became. Sorry.
I was going to say that that I know that you've been working in self-advocacy as a disability self-advocate and working in group self-advocacy for a very long time. At least I first met you like 10 years ago. So I know that you've been around longer than that. So you've done the hard yards and you've been doing this work for a long time. So kudos to you that, you deserve to be the president.
Thank you. But I think I have been doing advocacy since the age of 5, because I was always having to jump up and down for my rights and being included. And I think it's important to be involved in organisations and supporting the government to develop programs and legislation for organisations that have people with disability at their core. Like, we've just done a big project, part of NEDA was with the Royal Commission on into abuse and neglect of people with disabilities. This wouldn't have occurred if it wasn't for organisations like NEDA, because NEDA pushed for this Royal Commission to happen, because we know that people that are with disability don't always have a voice and they don't get to say what's happening. So as part of NEDA, and I worked on that project. I did a little bit of a thing on the Royal Commission, so I know how important it is. And if we don't make the government aware of what's going on in our sector, then they're not going to change it. They're not going to be aware of it to change policies and procedures and legislation. So it's important.
Yeah, with you there. So what the Royal Commission is one example of where NEDA has had an impact on government, and along with a whole lot of voices, they over a long period of time, the pressure was put on the government, and finally the Disability Royal Commission was held after decades. But can you give other examples of some of the successes, or maybe some of the not so successes, of where NEDA has, advocated to the government for change?
Well, we're currently working on a project with NDIA for the inclusion of people with, I don't know, I'm not sure what the actual title of it is, but we're making sure that people from multicultural background are catered. I don't even know if the word catered for is the right terminology, but we're assisting them to work out how to interact with people with disabilities, and the inclusion of and the training of staff and stuff, because NDIA has come up with we were working with them on this massive project, which we haven't finished yet, but hopefully NDIA will be part of one of our big projects that helps industry understand people with multicultural background issues, because it's all right for them to help everybody else, but they may not have the full scope of what people from multicultural backgrounds need. So we're helping them put it together.
That's really good to hear. I imagine, I don't know the stats, but I imagine that that we all know how difficult it can be to access the NDIS, and the more layers of barriers and marginalisation can just make it harder and harder. And I do know the stats on women in the NDIS, and that is only 37%, meaning that.
Well, that's really low. I thought it would be a lot.
And it's not
because it would be really higher.
It's not because less women have disability than men. It's just that the barriers for women, because the system is a bit sexist, really, as well as excluding a bit racist. It has all those systemic layers that sort of make it more difficult for people who are different. Not that women are different, and not that people from the English speak back we're different. It's just that there are more barriers. So the big issue is that the NDA have realised that they need to address some of the barriers that women face, and I imagine that women from non-English speaking backgrounds are even less represented in the NDIS because of that.
I can't answer that question, but I've also got here most of the staff identify living with a disability, staff with ABI, cerebral palsy. This is what we've got on the board at NEDA. We've got staff that have got psychosocial issues, just to name a few. It's some of our council. So we've got a range of disabilities on the board that you may look like they haven't got any disability, but we've got a range of members or staff that work with NEDA on the board, and staff members that have got different disabilities. So that makes it a unique place to work, because not everybody works the same depending on their disability, but we get along and we do stuff together.
I'd love to see that in the world, or in Australia, more spaces where people with different disability work together for a common cause. Because traditionally our history has history of policy, I suppose, in the government and funding has meant that people with disability get put in silos, and we're all sort of separated from each other. People with brain injury over there, people with CP over here, people with mental illness over here. And it is great when lots of different people with different disability get together, because I really enjoy that. I learn lots, but I also it does enable you to be more creative and really connect with each other as to how you're going to best work together, and having that open conversation around access needs. I think I hope to see more of that in the future.
Well, I hope that in the next 20 years or something that there is no barrier between able and disabled people. Hopefully the barriers are a lot less than what they are now. That's my hope.
Here's to that.
I probably won't be able to say it, but that's what I'm hoping for.
Although I would like to hope that we still retain a sense of our own cultural group as well, a sense of pride in our own community.
That's right, but we're also going to break down those barriers where able-bodied people and disabled-bodied people can't get along, because we've all got to realise just because you're able-bodied doesn't mean you're going to end up staying able-bodied. And that's what I always say to people. Don't take your legs, don't take your life for granted, because 1 minute you can be crossing the road and something happened and your whole life turns around, and then you end up in the situation that we're in that we didn't necessarily put ourselves in, but we were in the circumstances that you find yourself in, and you've got to relearn to fit into what society expects you to.
And it's not that uncommon. It happens to lots of us. It's just this sort of weird thing that it only happens to other people, but it actually happens to lots of us. And of course, also, we're all going to get old, and disability us.
That's my whole point. Just because you're walking around, by the time you're 70, 80, you're going to be on a walking frame if you're not in a wheelchair already.
And if you're not, you're going to be caring for somebody in your family or your partner or your parent or somebody. You'll be a carer for them. So you're right. Everyone, almost everyone, like 99% of people are going to live with disability at some point in their life.
That's why I keep saying to people, stop taking your bodies for granted, because 1 minute they work and next minute they're up. You can't do what you used to do 5 minutes ago. If you're in the wrong place at the wrong time,
being human. Sometimes it's not even about being in the wrong place. It's just being like, well, this is what it is to be human. We have bodies that that could fail or could, change, be different, lose limbs, whatever. Like these things. That's what it is to be human, I think.
Yeah, but that's what we've got to get out there to our younger generation, and also I think not only our younger generation but our older generation. It's nothing to be ashamed of to ask for assistance, because I think a majority of cultures, not all cultures, don't identify with the word disability. So that's why they're not accessing things like the NDIS and organisations that could help them, because in their culture there is no such word as disability. So it's a matter of making the younger generation understand that they're not invincible, that things happen, and try to protect yourself out of harm's way if possible. And for the older generation to understand it's not a thing of shame. It happens, and there are places that can help you and support you, and don't shy away from it, because there's no shame in it.
Here. Okay, I've got a curly question, another question for you, which you can not answer because obviously these are made up in my brain right this second. But do you think there is, and this is broad because I know that, non-English speaking cultures, there are so many and they're all really different and unique. So this is a bit of a generalized stereotyping question. But anyway, here goes. Do you think there's more stigma around disability in
I knew you were going to put me on the spot. And I'm going to be politically correct here, so I'm going to be careful.
Would you like me to save you, Maryanne?
Yes, please, Julie. Can you save me?
I will save you, and I don't have to be PC because I'm not part of NEDA. So I believe there is more stigma amongst the cohort. There's lots of shame and lots of they may think it's a curse. Some cultures still believe that. So they believe that they really rely on family, so they may not like we said earlier, they might not be the stats because they rely on family assistance. And so family get burnt out and lots of tension occurs within families. And
I was just going to say, Julie, with that also, it's expected from multicultural backgrounds that once the parents pass on, and if they've got a disabled child, that the able-bodied sibling takes over the care of their brother or sister or grandmother or whatever that person is. If something happens to the head of the household, it's up to the next able-bodied person or male or female to take over that whole role of carer.
Well, I'll give you a personal example. I'm a woman who has health issues. I've got ABI, other health issues. Yet I was the primary carer of my mother who had dementia. And so I got very little support, always getting heckled about things I needed because I was a primary carer, but I wasn't made privy to financials. So if I had to ask something, it made it really difficult to ask for money to buy things for my mother because they always thought that they didn't want to give me a dollar. And it wasn't about me getting a dollar. It was about things my mother needed. So it was very difficult for me to be under those circumstances. So once father was getting really ill, it became even worse. The situation became even worse. I was bullied and I suffered, well, let's call it what it is, domestic violence. And when I articulated this to others, they basically said, well, there are no bruises on your body, so it's not violence. But they had a really broad, narrow-minded opinion about violence. So violence includes lack of financial resources, being heckled, being put down. And I was the primary carer for a long time, over 20 years. And then I got burnt out and I had to leave home because I had to survive. So yes, there is stigma and shame, and the vast majority of ethnic communities rely on females to be the carers, the vast majority, and the attitudes among the males is very, very difficult because even if they do a little bit of the caring, they always want a medal somehow. They want a medal, and I just shake my head. I just shake my head how they want to be cheered and clapped for doing something minor. So anyway, so yes, I think I answered your question, Larissa.
And of course, I do know that it's really diverse and broad because there are many, many different cultures we're talking about, and there will be differences within there for sure.
And the other thing is, with multicultural societies, back in the day, I don't know whether it still happens now, but back in the day, if you had a person with a disability in your family, they would what we would classify as put them away somewhere, hide them, put them in institutions, and not even acknowledge they existed because it was a thing of shame and, as Julie said, a curse. Whereas hopefully in 2023, that is slowly, and I mean slowly, changing.
So, but may I add all those comments were prefixed by allegedly. Hello, is everyone with me?
Sorry, which comments?
The comments I made were allegedly. So,
Right.
comments, so allegedly.
So no legal court case coming down on Julie.
No, well, we've already been through that. So it's all allegedly. So anyway, so do we want to continue, everyone?
We do. I would like to know a little bit more about Maryanne's vision for the future. Personally, in terms of your own life with disability as a disabled ethnic woman, or just more generally for disabled people with ethnicity across Australia. What's your hopes for the future?
You're going to do this to me, Elizabeth. I suppose being a person of disability and ethnicity from my culture, I suppose I hope I'm around for a little bit longer. I mean, with all my health issues, I mean, with this stupid COVID and what we've all been through, and I'm still dealing with a lot of issues from that, because unfortunately I caught COVID, and I'm still trying to deal with it all, but I'm slowly getting there. But what I'm hoping is that women get more roles in important organisations, but you need the right person in to take over roles. You need someone. I hope we get a society that's not a dictatorship, that is open and collaborative. Just because you're female doesn't mean you're going to be the right person for whatever job you apply for. But it's got to be open and honest and collaborative. And yes, you give the opportunity to women to apply, but you've also got to make sure that they're the right fit. Just because you've got a piece of paper that says you can do something doesn't mean you can put it into practice. And if you're not the right person for the fit, it can actually make things worse and go backwards when we want to go forwards. Because not all people, and I think I'm one of these people, I think I like to be collaborative. I like to think outside the box. I like to challenge things. But I also like to ask questions to make sure I've got the right information before I make a choice. That's what we've got to be careful that our societies are, and governments especially. Just because you're in government doesn't mean you've got all the answers. It's got to be a collaborative approach from all different ethnicities and understanding and life experience.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to aim for, inclusion, more female participation, understanding, togetherness, tolerance. We're not all perfect. We make mistakes, but then don't crucify it. Don't crucify us for it either. It doesn't matter whether you're female or male. Everybody makes mistakes, but we've got to all learn from them and make sure they're not repeated, because we don't want to end up back that 48 years ago when people with disabilities don't get heard.
Yeah.
If that
Oh my
makes
God.
sense.
Here. That was such a such a great little manifesto for a future vision. I'm with you on that. So much that, yeah, the collaboration and the idea of that we can't we don't all know everything, and that we all know some, but together we know more. And that idea of working together, and also being that permission to experiment, take risks, make mistakes, and learn and be conscious of our history.
And also let people with disabilities have the same opportunities to make mistakes like their able-bodied counterparts. And stop putting us in cotton wool, because we are still people. Just because we sit, for instance, because I sit on my backside, doesn't mean I can't make a mistake. That I have to be perfect. Because nobody in their right mind is always going to be perfect. You can't hold us up on these pedestals thinking, well, you're disabled, you're not allowed to make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you don't learn. As long as you're not harming anybody or harming yourself, then you treat us as equals.
I agree that like lots of disabled people don't get they don't get the opportunities to make the mistakes. They often are we sometimes live in environments where risk is seen as seen as terrible. So we're not given the permission to sort of be able to go on a walk or a night out where, we might encounter, things like drugs and alcohol or other people or public transport that isn't accessible. Like, there's a whole lot of barriers and risks there, but we still deserve the right to be able to go out and find out what it is. And yes, we may fall over and things might happen to us, but we need that right, just like everyone else, to take risks. And I don't think we always get that. So good point, Maryanne.
I just want to pick up on what Maryanne said about a piece of paper doesn't necessarily mean you're 100% the right person for that job. All of us on this panel and many people in the disability sector had done voluntary work for a very long time. I mean, I did voluntary work for 4 years, and Maryanne's done lots of voluntary work.
I still do volunteer work.
You still do, so do I, and I'm sure Larissa does also, and many other people in the sector. And with voluntary work, each party has to get something out of it. And so that piece of paper, it is important to understand the theory, but without practical experience, like what we have had in the disability sector, you're not going to have that depth of knowledge. So don't be afraid to do voluntary work, because you gain lots of skills. It's not to say you have to do that forever. It's only, it's time-centered, or until you get
it's a stepping stone.
The stepping stone. So, yeah. So I'd like to acknowledge that, Maryanne, about that bit of paper, because, able-bodied people, they get a bit of paper and they think, oh, right, I'm really, like, I'm going to be gunned. But then when they get into their sector, they find it a whole different ballgame,
And just because you got a piece of paper and you've been taught all this stuff, you can't expect what you've learned in a textbook to be gospel, because it's not gospel. It's only one way to look at things. But if you've got practical what was I trying to say? If you've got the theory behind it, but you've got practical experience, and combining the two with what you've lived and what you've learned,
Okay. It's still live.
Okay, good.
Still live?
Well, then if we're still live, we could just wrap up, I
Yeah.
guess.
So, okay, Maryanne, thank you, Maryanne, for your time with us.
Unless, just before that, unless Maryanne has anything she'd like to add before we leave. Although I know she's.
I'm just looking at the questions that you gave me. I don't know have I given you what EPA is?
Say that again.
Have I explained to you what EPA is?
So
EPA.
what's that, Maryanne?
It's available for hang on, I'm just going to read it out. So just hang on a second. It was part of your question 8, whatever question 8 was. What was your question 8 on your sheet?
How does NEDA support its workers?
Because it's got what they call an EPA, which is available, which is they pay above award wages and holiday and holiday loading 5 weeks of flexibility and working from home as well.
Okay, that's good.
NEDA is federally funded and does the rights of participants uphold all the over three. Hang on, this might be interesting. That I just read. There's 3.5 billion people with a disability expected to and support and load the best life we can to disability, and that includes the disability support pension raises for the most people that live in poverty. So there's 3.5 billion people with a disability in Australia.
Okay. Well, on that note,
That was important, but I thought it was added to your statistic thing.
yeah,
Before.
yeah, that's great, Maryanne. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you, seeing you grow so much over the years. You've gained confidence and position, and it's been an absolute pleasure seeing that growth in you. And yeah, so I'll see you around in other meetings. So
You definitely will.
okay, great.
Great to see you again, Maryanne. And
Thank you.
I hope that that things get better with the long COVID, because I bear that.
Trust me, I hope so. It'll be 15 months of torture.
All the best.
Thank you.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.
Catch us on Your Life, Your Voice YouTube channel, live every Monday fortnight or on demand. We would like your comments and suggestions on topics that you would like us to explore. Leave your comments on YouTube comment section. Please feel free to email us on dndyourlifeyourvoice@gmail.com or contact us via the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Inc. Phone number 1300 676 044. 1300 676 044. Diversity in Disability is a project
of the Migrant Resource Centre, Northwest Region Incorporated, and would like to thank the management for funding this project, especially living through the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has been difficult for people with disabilities living in isolation.